want to get to our first segment here. And honestly, it's been a lot of the same in the past couple months in terms of what is going on, in terms of what is leading the news. It's been a lot of ICE raids, a lot of tariffs, a lot of Trump. This is the first time I have seen a Democrat take the national media attention by the balls and drag it with them. Gavin Newsom has always been a popular Democrat. He's always been, penciled in for the 2028 presidential race, but he has really taken the lead of the party by storm and gone after Trump in a satirical imitation campaign. And for those who are unaware of what he's been doing, he's been on Twitter just absolutely lampooning Donald Trump, right? So he has been, everyone knows how Trump tweets, how he talks, and Gavin Newsom is basically just copying that. This was a tweet from earlier today. TJ actually texted, it was actually yesterday, last night, but he texted me over this. And this is exactly how Trump tweets, right? This is coming from Governor Newsom press office official Twitter account. Wow, Fox News can't stop talking about me. Gavin C. Newsom, America's favorite governor. Tonight, their entire primetime lineup was about me. Jesse Waters kept calling me daddy. Very weird. Not interested, but thank you. Sean Hannity, very nice guy, clearly cried because I won't take his advice. Sorry, Sean. Then they dragged out the B team of dum-dums. Meatball Ron, Tommy Toilet Lauren, and Teddy Cancun Cruz. He even flew back special from Mexico. All whining about me, GCN. They had to play the music to shut Ted up about my beautiful hair. I get it. So jealous. Total disaster. MAGA hates me because they hate you. They hate that California is the fourth biggest economy in the world. They hate that crime is down, that we're number one in farming. I love farmers, manufacturing, tourism, and tech, all while we give affordable health care, free school meals, make America pregnant again, paid baby leave for moms. They should not return anyways, $20 minimum wage, and so much more for the people. They hate the Democrats are winning. Fox and MAGA have Newsom derangement syndrome. They should cry harder. Sad. GCN. And there's plenty more like this. I'm going to pop up a couple as we talk about it here. But Cole, what has been your take on this persona that Governor Newsom is putting on?
I think I said it recently. I said I don't know if he's the man for the future, but I know he's the person for the present, and that's good enough for me. Like we can't be, I've said this before. Like it's fine we love to speculate, we love to debate who the candidates for 2028 might be. Certainly Newsom is going to be on that list of maybe the top 5 candidates, along with Harris and Buttigieg and a few others. But like the thing that I love about it is that it has reached the right. And what is so hard about the way that our current media infrastructure is set up is you and I know that it's almost impossible to break through into the right wing blogosphere. And as much as we might have criticized Newsom for platforming folks like Charlie Kirk and people like that on his podcast, like I think it did at least open up an avenue for them to hear him. And then I think this continues that, where whether whatever the reaction is by people on the right, if they're upset about it, if they just think it's funny, if they just think it's stupid, whatever, they're talking about it. And that was the thing that Trump did that has been so successful, is that he's like a constant car crash that the media simply can't avoid talking about. Like there would be no Donald Trump president today if the media had simply said, this is a sideshow and a circus, it's not worth our time, ignore him. The best way to have dealt with him early on would have been to ignore him. But since we didn't do that and we're stuck with him, the next best thing is to mock him. And I think Newsom is exactly spot on with this. What I'm curious to see is how they're going to be able to continue this for a while, because this seems to be the thing that, like we saw this during the campaign when Tim Walz came out with the weird thing, and that blew up, and everybody was talking about how weird they were. But then it sort of disappeared, and they kind of backed away from it. And I don't know if that was, a conscious decision, or if that's just the nature of the way that we consume media now, where things have a shelf life, and we can be interested in something for a certain amount of time and then we get bored with it. So I'll be curious to see how you can continue it on, and whether you can continue to keep the attention with this way of going about things. But it certainly has been effective in getting the right to, I think, hear a little bit of what the left has been saying, and maybe hopefully see a little bit reflected back at them when it comes to what they are supporting and what they're lending their credibility to. I think it's exactly the right move for the moment. I'm just curious, where can we keep this momentum up?
No, it's very funny because I was workshopping a thumbnail for this, and I was trying to figure out how to fit Gavin Newsom is both the hero we need right now, as a good thing, and the hero we deserve as a pejorative. There is no way that I get that in the thumbnail.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, we shouldn't be in this place. We shouldn't be in a place where somebody on the left is forced to do this. This is certainly not where I wanted us to be, but I think it's where we need to go. I said it the other day, we have to fight dirty and live clean. Meaning we have to be able to get down in the trenches, to respond in kind, to show them, basically look, here's the crap that you're doing, bad dog, and shove their face in it a little bit. I think that's where we're at right now. I'm not calling Republicans dogs, but I'm saying at some point you have to be able to really get them to focus on, this is what you are supporting. Like I said recently, the difference, and I think that what's driving the right crazy, is they know that Gavin Newsom is pretending to be this way. Donald Trump is this way. Gavin Newsom can stop being that way anytime he wants. Donald Trump cannot, because that's just what he is. And to them, that reeks of authenticity. To me, that illustrates that Donald Trump is a moron. And if you think Gavin Newsom is being a moron by acting like him, guess what you're saying about your president?
So first of all, I want to say thank you for, you said they're dogs, and you're like, no, I'm not saying Republicans are dogs. I'm glad that you did that, because we know that's not true. If they were dogs, Kristi Noem would have gone on a mass shooting spree in the White House by now. So it's funny, exactly what you're talking, exactly what you just said. I'm going to play this clip of JD Vance, and it plays right into it. So I'm just going to add this here.
Don't help them too much. Stop sounding like crazy people. That really is all it is. I mean, this idea that Gavin Newsom is somehow going to mimic Donald Trump's style, I think that ignores the fundamental genius of President Trump's political success, which is that he's authentic. He just is who he is. You've got to be yourself. You've actually got to talk to people honestly about the issues. I don't think it's that complicated. Don't be a crazy person. Be authentic. If the Democrats did that, they'd do a hell of a lot better. But stop.
It's exactly. Go ahead.
No, I'm just, time and time again, you get your breath gets taken away a little bit by just the constant drumbeat of be authentic, be yourself. And then Kamala Harris goes on TV and is authentically herself, and they're like, oh, but that laugh. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, you don't really want authenticity. You just want to be able to bash people over the head and never be called out for it, right?
Yeah, and I'm gonna play the clip from Hannity too, because they're very similar. So real quick here.
I have a point. Results matter. A new performative, confrontational style. Maybe it wins you points with the loony radical base in your party, but America is not going to vote for that record.
It's so funny, and Gavin Newsom, he reposted both of those, saying he almost got it that time. Like they are feeding right into it, and that's why this works on so many levels. Because you're right. I don't even think this is like fighting dirty. I don't think this is dirty. It's not like respectability politics. It lacks decorum. I've never given a fuck about decorum. I've always said decorum needed to go out the window long before we had Trump, because it's just a way of manipulating people. Like, politicians should talk like normal people. It makes a lot more sense. And in today's day and age, the attention economy is all that fucking matters. It is the only thing that matters, basically, for anything in business and politics and whatever you want to say. The people who step up and capture attention are the winners in today's society. And they're talking about authenticity, but here's the thing: Gavin Newsom is authentically just as much of a sociopath as Donald Trump. Like, he right. authentically loves doing this and loves capturing the attention as much as Donald Trump. And that's why this is working. If Kamala Harris tried to do this, it would not fucking work. Like, if Kamala Harris tried to do this, it would come off incredibly inauthentic, and it just wouldn't work. Not everyone can do this. Gavin Newsom is also a psychopath. It's part of his fucking brand. And that's why this sort of thing works. And every time the Republicans, they come at him like J.D. Vance, well, you can't just pretend to be a crazy person. You have to authentically be a crazy person, like the great Donald Trump. Like, they just tie themselves in knots. And I don't know. So here's the thing. From where I'm sitting and where you're sitting and where other people with media literacy are sitting, the satire is so obvious, and so effective. Like, it is such clever satire. We were talking about this on that last week's show when we were talking about South Park, that this is just incredibly coherent. It is airtight. There's no holes in the satire. It is obvious what they're doing. I also saw like other posts. He posted Gavin Newsom with the fucking giant thing on his ear, the way Donald Trump had from the assassination attempt, and people were like, "How dare he make someone died?" And it's like, bro, this is what Donald Trump, like, every attack on Gavin Newsom,
like Donald Trump's own followers were wearing those things at the RNC.
Exactly. Now, here's my question to you. Like, we all get that. It is such a clear, it is impossible to beat, but Americans don't have great media literacy. We are not particularly good at understanding satire. And my question is, do you think that this satire is obvious and effective enough to break through to the average everyday voter?
Yeah, I do. I do think that, and here's the thing I've been trying to tell people, and, look, the reason, we'll get to talking about redistricting in a moment, but you and I both know that all is happening in Texas, and all that's happening in Ohio, and all that's happening in, any other states that are considering redistricting to try and build more seats, is because they fully understand that what they're doing is incredibly unpopular, and that they are in deep shit with the American people right now. Now, Trump can deny it, and I've said this several times. You can lie to people about reality, but reality doesn't lie. And Republicans are dumb, but they're not so dumb that they don't know that. And I think that what they understand is that the average, when you get online and you're in those conversations with the mega folk, right? Meaning that core, that hard, metal core in the middle of the planet of Trump, like, those folks are never going to leave him. I mean, we've seen that, right? Like, he's in the Epstein files. They know this. They're fine with it, because to them, the highest currency that they can have is that you and I are here talking about them. That's all they care about, that you and I are upset. To them, that's perfect. But that represents like 30% of the right, not 30% of the overall electorate, 30% of the right. And you are not going to hear from those people who voted for Trump in 2016 and in 2020 and in 2024, who aren't eternally online and who aren't part of that core. And they're leaving. They're not going to be vocal about it, but they are. And then the rest of them, I do believe, when they see how this, so, as you said, this satire so clearly highlights the idiocy of Trump and the way that he communicates like a petulant toddler who's throwing a fit 24/7, 7. And I think that wears on people. And my hope is that those people that you're not going to hear from are going to show up. I don't even know, honestly, when we talk about this redistricting, I'm not even convinced that Texas can pull 5 seats. People are pissed right now. And from the few elections that we've seen, special elections and stuff, you're seeing like 20 to 30 point swings away from Trump compared to 2024 in some of those races. Like, that's existential numbers. Those are numbers that I'm not even sure redistricting can get around, because a handful of those districts are pretty purple in Texas. And you take the previous elections and you take the swings that we're seeing, they're going to have to manipulate the hell out of those if that's what they're doing to win. I don't even think they're going to be able to do it. And that, I think, Trump is his own worst communicator. But it doesn't hurt to have somebody out there on the other side illustrating absurdity by being absurd, as Rush Limbaugh would often say. I think that we need some of that. Sometimes you just have to see it, And now, so there's going to be certain people. There's going to be certain people that'll be galvanized by this. We know that. Like, there's always the human psychology. I call it the Oobleck effect. The harder you slap somebody, the more likely they are to kind of resist it. But I do think that, like I said, it's opening a door that's exposing people on the right to things that they previously probably weren't aware of. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah, no, so it's not even, I don't even know if they're like unaware. I think like part of it genuinely is Trump was the only game in town doing it. Like even among Republican politicians, none of them tweeted like that. None of them spoke like that. None of them were as abrasive and going out there and just speaking in that way. Even like JD Vance, he has that terminally online speak that he goes to, but he isn't that absurd. Like you said, it is an absurd way that Donald Trump speaks, especially when he, posts, and it's become a thing of his that is very recognizable. That if Gavin Newsom's doing it becomes less cool. Like it's just like, oh, this thing Trump's been doing, hey, Gavin Newsom's doing it the same way. Now it's like when your dad starts, saying slang, and you're like, well, I gotta fucking stop saying that word now. And it's like it becomes less cool because the bad guys are doing it, right? So I wanted to pull up 2 things here. TJ, power is taken, not given. He said Donald Trump should try mimicking Gavin Newsom by being tall, in shape, and good looking. And yeah, he should try that, TJ. I don't know how well it's going to go for him. But if you go by his official height and weight in his medical records, that he is tall and in shape. He's basically an NFL player. And he also says, I disagree with Chris. If 3 times Trump voters haven't abandoned him by now, literally nothing will cause them to. They will be Trump supporters until the heat death of the universe. So I agree with TJ there. I don't think that this sort of tactic is going to shift 3-time Trump voters. They're not going to suddenly see this shit and go, I'm not voting for Trump again. I do think, however, it's going to get people off the couch that were just previously disillusioned with the Democratic Party. The people that Chris spoke about earlier that were kind of like himself, where it's like, I've never liked Trump. I voted for him because I hate the Democrats. If you just give people something to like about the Democrats, they'll suddenly be like, oh shit, well, you get stability. And again, when the fucking reality hits, the economy doesn't do well, which we're also going to get to. People can't find jobs. All of this shit is hurting them. And that stink is off the Democratic Party. It's no longer something they fucking hate. They look at it and they're like, hey, this doesn't seem that different from a vibes check level as the fucking Republicans are now. And at least I had a job when the Democrats were in office. That's where you can start peeling people off. The hardcore MAGA Republicans, that 33% of the Republican base that Donald Trump has always had fucking cult captured, they're not going anywhere. But that 33% of like the Rogan Trump voters, Mitch McConnell wing of the Republican Party that they just fucking hate the Democrats, but they don't really like where the party has gone under Trump, but they haven't gone over yet. It's the combination of those two things. You need both. Did you say this on Thursday? I don't know if it was you. It might have been you, but you need both Donald Trump to fail and Democrats to be likable again. You need both of those things to get the swings that we need. And Trump would this is, we're going to get to the economic problems that we're facing later in the show, but this is likable. This is capturing the attention economy. This is, people are liking what they're seeing with what Gavin Newsom is doing here. Would you agree with that analysis, Colt?
Yeah, I think so. And I would say I don't necessarily disagree with TJ. What I was saying was that those people that you're encountering online, the hardcore, no, that nothing's going to reach them, because for them, the entire benefit of supporting Trump is our tears. So of course they're not going to leave him. I think, though, that you just need to be able to peel off a few people here and there. Like, the margins were not that big in 2024. We had more people sitting out, and again, this is going to come up when we talk about what Democrats need to do to be able to get popular again. My take on that, in part, was my criticism of Harris's campaign, and it's the same. It was the same criticism of Biden's campaign, and it's the same criticism of everyone who's ever run against Trump, is that they fall into this pattern of reacting to what he's doing. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. What? When all you really needed to do was come out and say, that's bullshit. I'm not going to address that. Here's what I'm going to tell you, what I'm going to do for you. Like, forget all of that. That's nonsense. It's not worth our time. Let me focus on how I can improve your life and how we can make it better. And I think that if they can do that, but I mean, we're kind of past that now. Now we're talking about, we need to just fully just make them look stupid. They're going to do a lot of that themselves. But that would have been, I think, the better way to respond is you look at the idiocy that this person engages in. And as a candidate, you look at the American people in the eye and you say, that's not worth your time. That's a distraction. Ignore it. I'm not going to address it. Here's what we're going to talk about. How do we make your life better? How do we as Democrats improve your life, improve the economy, make sure you have a good paying job, affordable health care, affordable child care, paid family medical leave, portable health care that doesn't disappear when your job does. How do we make your life better? That's the populist message that needs to come out of the Democratic Party. We can get more into that later. But I think that would have peeled off more of those people instead of cozying up to, Republicans who are never Trumpers, which just turned off a bunch of Democrats. We need to be able to be populist from our own side and sell what we have to offer the American people. Somebody made a great point today where they talked about, and I've said this before, when you tell people why we need taxes and the Republicans come back with, oh, but you're going to chase away businesses, you're going to chase away the rich. Well, your response to that is there's more to business than tax shelters, right? You can take that money and you can invest in infrastructure, high-speed internet, clean water, rail, all the things that businesses need, a well-educated population. And you sell that. You say, no, they'll not leave if we tax them more, because we're going to be using that money to improve and benefit them in other ways so that they can't go anywhere else, because we have the best educated populace, we have the best internet, we have the best infrastructure, we have the best roads, the best bridges, the best airports. That's what you need to sell. And we just haven't been doing that. We've been reacting. We've been playing parent to Trump's toddler. Instead of saying, ignore the toddler whining in the corner, he's not going to do anything for you. He doesn't even know you exist. Here's what I'm going to do. Got to stop focusing on the bull breaking all the china in the corner and tell the American people, ignore the toddler. Let's talk about what we can do to make your life better.
Totally agree with that. By the way, I always say to that, like, you know, the rich are going to leave if you tax them. Why are all the blue states where all the fucking big businesses are? Why do they make the most money? You know, just it's a very, very simple way to combat that. But I want to get one last question to you on Gavin Newsom before we leave this topic. So Gavin Newsom, I know that you are not necessarily a long-time member of the left and the left-wing internet and all of that. He's not very well liked among leftists and progressives.
I am aware of that.
For a variety of reasons. You're aware of that. He's kind of a popular. He honestly is like the left-wing version of Donald Trump. He's going to mostly do what benefits himself, but he's not quite as senile and crazy. And I think there's like good and bad to that. Certainly, as you said, he's a useful tool right now. But as someone who isn't as dyed in the wool, kind of raised to hate someone like Gavin Newsom, because like that's just like a lot of left-wing people will knee jerk. I will not praise Gavin Newsom for what he's doing right now because he's the bad guy. And I'm like, he is the bad guy to me still, but like what he's doing is correct. It's a good thing and we should acknowledge that. Where do you see Gavin Newsom? Like personally, does he appeal to someone like yourself as a potential leader of the Democratic Party? Or is there a part of you that's worried, oh shit, if he's the one stepping up and taking the reins, I don't really like that outcome? Obviously, it's better than Democrats losing, but like, is that something that you would be comfortable with? Or are you like, I really hope that this guy is just a stepping stone to get us to where I really want to be?
Yeah, you know, I could see the stepping stone argument, and that's probably where I would default to. But when I think about it more, I go, how many stepping stones do we need? Right? You know, like Biden was supposed to be the bridge to the future. And then he decided he was going to run again, which, look, I didn't support that, but I also didn't support him stepping out of the race because if the Republicans can rally around a senile old fool, then so could we. You know, like I think that it weakened Harris in the way that it went down, and that was unfortunate. And again, it's just one of these examples of Democrats sort of, you know, cannibalizing their own because we have very high standards, and that's great. We should have high standards, you know, but at some point, like, you have to understand that there's pragmatism. And obviously, if it's Gavin Newsom on the ballot against J.D. Vance or, God forbid, Donald Trump a third time, I'm going to vote for Gavin Newsom, right? You know, like I'm going to have to swallow my opinion on a few things because I know he's going to be pragmatic and he's not going to give you all the progressive things that you feel like you need. You know, I've always, like, as much as I respect and admire Barack Obama, I've also been very critical of the fact that the Affordable Care Act was a half measure. And they did it with this idea that Hillary was going to win, and then they could go into 2016 and then shore it up and fix it and make it better. And then Trump got in, and they spent the next 4 years trying to repeal it. And then all of a sudden, we just never really got, you know, Biden did some improvements and expanded access in some ways. And then Trump reversed that, you know, but I've always said, like, there needed to be much more of a hammer to get younger people to sign up. And we didn't do that. And it ended up raising costs, and it knocked people off their insurance. And it did a lot of damage to Democrats because they allowed themselves to be talked into taking away some of the incentive to sign up. Right. You know, they allowed Republicans to kind of undermine the ability to get it off on the right foot because Republicans thought if they did that, it would kill it. And then they could just get rid of it, you know, and now it's embedded, but it's still not what it needs to be. And so, you know, I think those are the kinds of things where, like, we've spent so many years, and this is the frustration that a lot of people have with the Democrat Party, is this idea that they're always selling themselves as a better alternative to the Republicans, but not as like the ultimate solution to what can make America actually great. You know, like, how can we improve your life to the point that you know that you can go to the hospital and get treated when you have a condition, you know? And I just feel like Newsom sort of represents, again, kind of this tepid, lukewarm progressivism. You know, he's great. He's populist. He speaks well. I think that he would be infinitely better than what we currently have. But he's not my ideal. In fact, I would probably say most of the leading candidates aren't necessarily my progressive ideal. But at the same time, like, we've shot ourselves in the foot so often by letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and now here we are. So what do you do? Like, do you look at it from a pragmatic standpoint and go, let's take the person that can get the most votes, that won't be fascist and won't send the National Guard and the Marines into U.S. cities, that won't persecute people because of the color of their skin, that won't go after universities because they refuse to kowtow to your particular ideology. Like, there is a point currently in which the alternative to Trump may be the best thing we can get. My concern is that Trump's going to push the Overton window so far to the right that we're going to end up with somebody like Reagan, and we're going to think that that's a Democrat. Like, that's what I'm concerned about. Is what I've seen so often from the left is they seem to be trying to hew to the middle to claim those disaffected Trump voters, instead of saying, wait a minute, maybe people, and I think we're kind of diving into the Democratic factions conversation on accident, but like, we need to be, I just think that we've got to be more aggressive at selling what we can offer, instead of telling people what will stop. It's, it worked for the right because they're fact diverse and they're all about feelings. It hasn't worked for the left primarily because most people on the left, I think, are a little more plugged in and a little more interested in nuance and fact and context, and that scuttles things a little bit. But we've got to kind of get beyond that. So I think that the ultimate take is, if Newsom's the candidate, I'm going to vote for him. He's not my first choice, but I think he's doing a great job right now. He deserves credit for that. I'm going to be really curious to see how other people kind of iterate off of this, because there's conversations happening in all kinds of places about, do we emulate this, or do we just let this kind of breathe and do its own thing? And I'm curious what the evolution of this is going to be.
Yeah, well, we have to see how this plays out, because I don't think like emulate this is the right answer, but I think find other versions of this that continue to work is, because as I said, if Kamala Harris tried to do this, it wouldn't work. If Elizabeth Warren tried to do this, it wouldn't work. If Joe Biden tried to do this, it wouldn't work. Like those types of people, they can't do this, but Gavin can. And you have to find what other things you can do to win the attention economy in a way that pulls that spotlight from Donald Trump. But
well,
before we get to
a parent of three young kids, I know well that you can like try all you want to explain to them why certain behaviors are not acceptable. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you just have to be like, this is what you sound like right now, and just give it back to them. Like when they're whining, when they're crying, you just look at them and go, this is what you sound like right now. And sometimes it stops them and they go, oh, I have recorded my kids and played it back to them. And so, this is what you look like. And you'd be surprised how effective it is. Far more effective than me saying to them, what you're doing is wrong, and here's why. If I just show them how they're behaving, they'll just be like, ugh. And it's been amazingly effective sometimes to just turn the mirror around and be like, this is what you look like to the world right now. And I think that's what really Newsom is doing.
Yeah, because honestly, you saying that tilted my "is this going to work" to sway people's meter a little bit more, because I have had that. I don't have kids myself, but I have done that when I get in intense arguments with like certain people in my life. I'm like, let's record this and let's watch it back, and it does work to kind of even facilitate better conversation in that moment, because they know like the panopticon, they're being looked at, they're being watched, it reflects back to them, and they become self-aware of what they're doing, and it does tend to have that effect. So I am interested to see how this continues to play out from that perspective. But before we get,
I think that we have
about Democratic factions and everything. Go ahead, finish up.
Well, I'll just wrap up and say, I think at some point you kind of have to be able to stop being the adult in the room. Mm-hmm. Not that you let your principles go, not that you become divorced from truth or fact or nuance or context or all of that. But I think sometimes you have to be able to say, okay, this is the turf that you want to play on. Let's do that. And then if you don't want to play on this turf, ask yourself why that is. You know, like I made the point earlier, so those who have the facts, pound the facts. If you don't have the facts, you pound the table, right? The louder somebody gets, the more evidence that is to me that their argument is weak. And if they're responding with anger and vitriol, it tells you that they don't know how to defend Trump on this. And I think that's effective. It's useful. It's not universally effective. You will have pockets of people who galvanize and get more entrenched with Trump over this, you know, but I think the most of the people that you're hearing speaking out are people who have a financial incentive to remain in bed with Trump. And I tend to dismiss people who have a financial incentive. I don't get paid for, you're not paying me to be on this podcast. I don't get paid for what I do on Threads. I have a handful of subscribers on Substack. I make like $20 a month, you know. It's like, I don't get paid for this. I'm doing this because I think it's important. I'm doing this because I think people need to hear this. I'm doing this because I think my perspective as somebody who has been a Trump supporter in the past, has been a conservative, and is now vocally opposed to him. I think there's use in that. You know, I tend to toss out most of what I hear from people who are being paid to defend Trump.
Thank you guys for watching. Me and Chris are going to get into it again on a future episode, so make sure you like and subscribe so you know when that is. And if you guys want to hear more of Chris, Chris, how about you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, you find me at Personality of Cult on Threads. You'll also find me on Substack, and I'm working on the YouTube channel, so I'll post that on Threads as soon as we get it done. But we're gonna do our best to copy John's formula.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for being here. TJ will be back with us next week on Tuesday at 6:30 for our Q&A show. Make sure to be there. Until then, have a good day, people.